Hi, everybody, and welcome to our COVID-proof parenting webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is James Hamilton. I'm the kids pastor at Bayside Granite Bay, and we are just going to have an awesome time with you together over the next hour. We'll keep it under an hour, but we are going to just be learning about how we can survive, not just survive, but thrive as parents as we go through this season. And you know, one of the hardest parts of being around our children all the time is in this lockdown. We have to be with our kids a lot of the time, but also another way of looking at it is we get to be with our kids a lot of the time during this lockdown. And I guess we get to choose which perspective we take. Are we going to survive, or are we going to thrive? And this webinar is hopefully just going to help us do that. We're going to help kids deal with the emotional and psychological roller coasters of this lockdown. We're going to be troubleshooting some of the challenges that face our children. We're going to discover ways to support our kids' mental health. And also you're going to hear some stories of parent fails as well as successes. So I am so excited that we've got three world-class experts joining this webinar today. I'm so pleased that they can join us as we have this conversation. First, I want to introduce Stephanie Kane to you. She is a psychology professor, a mum of two, and an amazing pastor's wife. Say hi, Stephanie.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
And how many kids have you got, Stephanie?
So I have 9-year-old boy-girl twins.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Never a dull day.
Excellent. That's wonderful. And we're also joined by Casey Short. Now, Casey is very smart. She has a master's in clinical psychology, and she's currently in the process of gaining a PhD in clinical psychology and throwing in a master's in theology while she's at it. So, Casey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so honored to be a part of this discussion. So much of my clinical work is with families and children, and although I don't have children of my own yet, it is an honor to be a person who can encourage and support, affirm, and believe in all the parents out there. You guys are superheroes.
And you are married to Brannon Short, one of our other campus pastors, so you are kind of living with a big kid.
In some ways, yes. Every day with him is an adventure.
Excellent. And finally joining us, we've got Brian Hopkins. He's a senior pastor of Bayside Folsom, and he's a parent of a few kids. Brian, welcome to this webinar. How many kids do you have, Brian?
Thanks, guys, for having me on. I feel like I'm way out of my depth. Like, am I smart enough to really be on this call? Thanks for having me. We have 13 kids. My wife, Dana, and I, we've been married for coming up on 20 years. We have 13. You did hear that correctly. 4 homemade, 9 adopted. All the adopted kids are all from Africa. So our family kind of looks like the United Nations in a sense. And we're just trying to survive, honestly, in this season. So the parent fail stories, those are going to come from me.
That's fantastic. And Brian, are they all in your house during this lockdown?
We only have 10 at home. Only 10.
Only 10. Okay.
3 out of the house. The oldest at home right now is 20. The youngest is 8. So 2 boys and the rest girls. So way outnumbered.
Wow. Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing some of your stories. And as I said, I'm James, kids pastor at Granite Bay, Bayside Church. I'm the father of 2 boys, a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, Elijah and Joey. And I have 1 wife, and that's Callie. So just before we get rolling, if you're watching this, please click share. I am sure that you know many other parents who would really benefit from the information, the fun that we're going to share on this webinar. So go ahead, click share. Also, we'd love for you to leave your comments below in the Facebook live stream here, and your comments, thoughts below. And also, we would love for you and encourage you to take notes through this seminar, but we are going to make notes available after this session. And to get those notes, you can text CV Parents to 56316. And we'll send out notes, plus we'll give you a variety of excellent resources relating to this subject. So just before we kick off and I hand over to the experts, I wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you. So how's homeschooling going? Yeah. It's fun, isn't it? Yeah. So you might be one of those parents that I see on Facebook whose kids are done with their homeschooling by 10:30 a.m. You're sitting in the backyard watching the kids play quietly for the rest of the day. If you are one of those parents, I admire you and I resent you.
Listen, if you're going to be praying that over us, we receive that. I certainly do. If you can prophesy that over my household, I would love it.
Oh, we will. But realistically, for most of us, it's not the case, is it? So my advice to you, first of all, right as we start, is not to play the comparison game. Maybe this season for you is really just about getting to know more the heart of your kids, and also getting to know the heart of Jesus for your kids. The other piece of advice that I would want to give to you is to choose your battles and continually adapt. We just can't be perfect parents, especially during this time. And I want to share a picture that my wife took of my 5-year-old this morning. And we're just having that battle of homeschooling and keeping our kids focused and on track. We have boys who need regular breaks and who want to just play and dress up and just have fun. And so keeping them focused on school, you got to choose your battles. So here's a picture of, I'm not going to share screen. I'm just going to go old school and hold this photo. This is Joey at work.
Love it.
He's dressed as a dragon. Now, Callie, my wife, could have gone, take that costume off, it's time to work. But it's like, choose your battle. If he wants to be a dragon, let him be a dragon. He's doing
Absolutely.
his work.
Yes.
So here's my final thought there is sometimes you have to let kids be dragons to be themselves. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to an expert in this field. And Stephanie, share some of your thoughts about parenting and helping kids, and especially troubleshooting some of these issues that we're facing as parents.
Yeah, and just to help normalize it for everyone, here I am. I've done all of this research and done all of this work working with children, have almost 19 years experience working with kids, and I have many failures in parenting, even with all the tools and research with me, because we're dealing with people and they don't fit into the formula always the way that we'd like them to, right? And so we hope that you get out of this is you have this incredible amount of experience before you on this panel. Casey, with all of her extensive experience in research, working with children through trauma, because this is in fact a traumatic event that we're experiencing. Brian, with all of his years of experience in ministry and parenting, working with children, even multiculturally in a multicultural context. And so I see what happens though. And I don't know if this happens to you guys, but it happens with me. We're listening to these tools that are given to us, and all of a sudden this little yes, but voice comes into our minds, right? And it's this voice that goes, yes, but my kids will never do this. Yes, but I don't have the resources for this. Yes, but I don't have the space for this. Yes, but I have too many kids for this. Yes, but I don't have that many kids for this. Yes, but it's only me. There's lots of yes, buts that come into your heads. And what I'm going to provide you with is just some troubleshooting, just to help you combat those yes, buts and keep an open mind as you receive the information that you're going to be receiving this evening, so that you can be open to it and then realize that you can apply it any way you want. Just like James was talking about, you can adapt it any way you want to your life. All right, so let's start with some of the first things.
Stephanie, can I just jump? Can I
sure,
jump in there,
absolutely.
This is, there's so much good stuff. Like, this is going to be almost an hour of amazing content, no doubt. And my goal always in a session like this is just to go away when I watch something like this. If I could just go away with one thing, if I could just pick one thing, and we're going to have way more than one thing here, but maybe you just pick the one thing that you're going to help move your family forward rather than be overwhelmed with, oh, I've got 10 more things to add on top of everything else I'm trying to do. So just maybe a little tidbit there.
I completely agree. It can get overwhelming because there's so many other things in our aspects of our lives, work, and different systems that we're trying to learn new tools. So getting more tools, while it seems like it could be very helpful, it can be overwhelming. So I completely agree with you, Brian. Take one. If that's your goal, take one, and that would be a success. And so one of the first things that we need to be aware of is just be self-aware that this pandemic is not only happening to our kids, it's happening to us and the trauma that comes with that. I think once we become parents, that becomes such a big part of our identity, and we become focused on caretaking and parenting and put ourselves a little bit in the back, that we're not recognizing that we're impacted just like they are. And so one of the things we need to do is just be aware of our own vulnerabilities to the stress and our susceptibility to also the nervous energy from being in such an unsettling time, okay? And this is not to shame you, but it's just for you to be aware that sometimes we're giving out body language to our children that may be conveying, that may be communicating to them that we really don't want to do some of the things that we're doing. And that's okay. But when it comes to applying these tools with our children, it's good to do it at a time when we feel like we're in a good place. And so if you're at a point where you're having a bad day or a bad moment and you had planned on doing one of these things, one of these tools, or apply them, but you're not feeling good about it, you're better off waiting till you're in a better place, because I guarantee you, nobody knows your body language better than your children. They have been studying you their entire lives. Yeah. And they know.
They are always watching.
Yeah, they know. They can tell if you're faking the funk. They can tell if you're really dragging yourself through something. And if you really want them to buy into any of these things, you need to be in a place where you can be authentic. So if you're not able to do it at that moment, don't do it. Wait till you're in a better place for that. Another troubleshooting tool that you can use is really consider timing. All right, so you're going to be hearing some great ways that you can engage your children and help them in coping. But timing can look very different for you, okay? Our children have their own natural rhythms of when they're more alert, when they're in better moods. We know what that looks like. Sometimes they take us to a roller coaster, they throw us for a loop, and you think it's gonna be a good day and it's not. But particularly if you have children of different ages in your household, typically, not always, but typically, teenagers sleep in a little bit later. Maybe they stay up a little bit later because they don't have a bedtime. And so maybe they're more alert and more open to doing things with you or trying some of these new activities later on in the day, maybe later on in the evening. Whereas your younger children may have bedtimes, and so they may be up earlier, and maybe that's a better time for you to apply some of these tools with your children. So just be aware of the timing, because that can really set you up for success. Additionally, the attention span. We all know, those of us homeschooling kids, how the attention span can be quite a challenge. Anybody get an amen on that one?
Amen.
And so you come in and you look at your homeschool list and you're going, okay, we can totally knock out one workbook page in like 7 minutes. It's not much to do. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. And it's like, you can't get past question number 2 because the attention span is just not there. And that's the same thing that applies to some of the activities you might be trying to do with your children to help them to cope. Is maybe you want to talk to them, and but they can only talk for about a minute. Or maybe you've got those who talk a lot and they can just keep going and going and going. I've got one like that at home. So just don't set a time in your mind coming in. Allow your children to kind of lead in the time that is appropriate for who they are. Okay.
Stephanie, can I jump in
sure,
right there?
Absolutely.
This is something we try hard to work on, that you don't try to do, and this totally echoes everything you're saying here, might be redundant, but we try not to do things that are too difficult, too late in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because, right, blood sugar's low, people are tired, the emotional energy drain of the day has already been significant, and then you interject something that's emotionally heavy into that time. Everybody's over it, including me and my wife. Like we're over it because she's busier than she's ever been. I'm busier than I've ever been. So just it totally illustrates that. But we try to live by that principle. We don't always do it just because of the way life happens, but we sure try.
I think that's so wise. And one way to, and you may feel a little bit, irritated or frustrated because you wanted something to work and it's not working, they're not talking as much. Yeah. It's always good just to leave an open door for children. Sometimes it's not about doing the activity, it's about letting them know that you're open to hearing from them and being there for them. And so one of the statements you can make to leave an open door is if you're trying to have a dialogue with your child and you can tell that they're not really engaging, or maybe they give you one word responses or, things like that, is just say, I know this was kind of hard or awkward. Thanks for even trying, to kind of talk about this with me. But I just want to let you know that I'm here to hear you anytime you want, anytime you're ready to talk about something. I just want you to know, just, hey, let me know and I will drop what I'm doing to focus on you, or set up a time when we can talk. And that's it. And that could in itself could be a very powerful communication to your children. So keeping that in mind.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
You're leaving it with them. You're just leaving it with them.
Yeah. Another thing when it comes to timing is really including them in the timing. We make assumptions about kids, about what would work well for them. So we might look at them and go, I'm looking at the day, you got homeschool in the morning, and then you got downtime, and then you got this, and we should be able to fit this in at this time. And maybe that's not what they had in mind. Maybe they had a different plan for their day in mind. And so there's nothing wrong with have a discussion with them and saying, hey, I was thinking about us trying to do, one of these things, one of these activities, a walk or something. What would be a good time that you think maybe tomorrow, this week, that we can do something like that? Because when you get them to be a part of planning the timing, then they'll actually be invested in doing it. All right. All right, and so this really comes off of, Brian's point and James's point coming from the beginning, which is about being adaptable and customizing what you're about to hear today. Is you're gonna hear a lot of different tips and tools, and it's okay to customize it. Casey has this incredible acronym she's gonna be sharing with you guys, and I don't wanna speak for her, but I already know that the intention is not for you to do word for word what she's saying. And it's just recognizing that you take it as a guideline, as a jumping off point, and you make it apply to your family in what makes sense. And so don't take it personally if you try it and your child is resistant to it. It's not about you. It's not that they don't want to connect with you. They're dealing with this just like you are. And they can have nervous energy and stress, and their brain is already dealing with all this stress. So adding something new could be really causing a lot going on up there in their heads. And so just recognize that it's not personal. And so what you want to do is you want to say, you know what, what's a different way that we can do this? And so some of the things that we're going to be sharing tonight, you may go, hey, this is only going to work with my kid if we do it in a game form. Or this is really going to work with us if I don't do it. Maybe it'll work with my spouse does it with my child, or if a sibling does it with the other siblings. So be open to making it apply to your life any way that works best for you. I don't know if you guys, Brian, I can imagine you might relate to this certainly in a way, having such a large age range and the connections that your children may have with each other.
That's exactly right. You just have to customize, and it's part of knowing what each kid needs in that moment, or not in that moment, or we can go through. It'd be better if Dana said that versus if I said that, or it'd be better if I said that than her saying that.
Right. And that's okay. And sometimes it's hard for us as a parents because we want to be the one that helps get them through something, but it doesn't matter who does it, as long as they're able to get whatever need that they need met at that time.
Absolutely.
And along that mindset is stay focused on the goal. The goal is not to do that specific thing. The goal is to get your child to a place of feeling a sense of relief with stress, or knowing that there's space in your home to relieve stress. So you may try one of the activities that you're being given, or tools that you're going to be given to try, and it doesn't work. But if you leave that open door and your child truly receives it as, oh, okay, I'm glad that my parents are willing to try this out, or that my mom is willing to do this, that is a success. Maybe you didn't get to do the walk or whatever it is, but they knew at that moment that you were willing to do something to try to connect with them or to try to ease their stress.
Yeah.
And that is okay. So stay focused on what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah, I just adding in there, I think just again, being ready to be adaptable and not be so focused on just your day. So, you know, maybe you're a parent that's trying to work from home and you have kids around and balancing all of that. You know, I think we all somehow have to try and create some adaptability within our work structure as well. So an example of that, 40 minutes before this call, I was jumping on my bed, having a lightsaber fight with my 9-year-old. Not part of my plan. That wasn't part of the day, but that's kind of what he wanted and needed at that moment. 5 minutes were done, I can get back to work.
Yeah.
And I lost.
I love that.
Exactly right. And I'll jump in there too. This was a couple of weeks ago. I was working on writing a sermon actually. And the point was all about loving each other more, right? You need to love each other more. And our daughters were running around and they were making way too much noise. And I'm literally writing words, typing on my computer screen, telling people in our church, you need to love your spouse more, your kids more. And I stopped typing to look up and yell at my kids to knock it off. You're being too loud. I'm trying to tell people how to love each other. And I just had to stop and go, oh my gosh, look where I'm at. Right?
Yeah.
What place am I at right now in my interaction? And it's that constant holding the mirror up to even me and going like, okay, God, what are you saying to me? Because my girls weren't sinning over there. They weren't doing anything bad. They were being what little girls do. I'm the one with the problem. So I had to take that reflection and go, oh, geez, I had to apologize. And then
you're preaching to me right now. You're preaching to me right now. For
I'm just
sure.
preaching to myself, actually.
And sometimes the means to a goal we think is going to work and it isn't. So the other day, I don't know if you guys have heard that Sesame Street is doing or already did a special to talk to kids about COVID. And I thought, oh, this is so cool. They're going to use puppets and, age appropriate wording. So I approached my kids and I go, hey guys, Sesame Street is doing this thing. It's to talk to kids about COVID. What do y'all think? You want to watch it? Because I can go search for it. And they were like, no. My daughter, so she was like,
9-year-old.
I don't want to know more about COVID. That's going to make me think about COVID. And then my son goes, that would stress me out.
Oh,
and it's so funny because here I thought this was a tool that I was going to use to really help them. And I learned 2 things from them in that encounter is, number one, they don't want to know more about it. Even though in some kids that might work. There might be some children that will get a stress reliever from having a better understanding of what's happening. But in my kids, they don't want to know more about it. And then the second thing I learned is that whatever I've been doing to protect them from being exposed to information about it, they appreciate. They want to be shielded from it. And so so I realized, all right, we're not going to do the Sesame Street thing, but I also know that I'm going to continue to not talk about it in front of them and not to expose to any shows or news or anything about it around them, because what they told me is that actually would increase their anxiety. And
no puppet talking about COVID.
None around your children, none. And the benefit of speaking a different language that I wish my kids spoke, but they didn't, is that at least in my house, I could do it in a different language and they wouldn't know what I'm saying. So that helps too.
Well, I'll have a word with Rufus on the sideshow, not to mention it as well.
Right. And finally, one thing to consider is let the kids lead. You'd be surprised how many healthy coping mechanisms just by nature that they're using. For example, James, when you showed that sweet picture of your little boy with that dinosaur, hat, you know, while he was working on his homework. I think that just really showed that I think he really taught all of us, like, hey, you can still have fun while you're learning. I don't have to like lose myself, place the kid on the side and become student. I can be all those things. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of things that if we just sit back for a second and watch our kids, we can learn a lot from it. So the other day I was texting with a friend of mine, and she has 2 small children. She's homeschooling, and she was at her breaking point. I mean, it was like they had just gotten started and school was over. Okay. Nobody wanted to get into it. It was just a bad morning. And she was just kind of venting about it, and she walked away. She's like, I just threw my hands up because I knew I was going to really lose it. And then she's like, check out what they're doing. And she sent me a picture, and it was them in the yard, just swinging with each other and playing with each other. And she was like, you know what? It's actually really relaxing for me to watch this. Yeah. Like,
that's beautiful.
And, and it really just taught her at that moment that, you know what? If we start out the day and it's just not going to work for us to start out doing this, if we got to start out swinging and playing, there is nothing wrong. It's really hard for us as adults right now. So much of our lives was about timing, right? Like, how much can we get done in a certain period of time? Let's keep going and keep going. And now we've got all the time. And I think kids are reminding us that we actually have more time than we've had before to stop and play and relax.
And if I could jump in there for a second, I hope none of my kids' teachers are watching this because they might get mad at me, but we have days where we go like, hey, you got to be really focused on school and kind of get after it. And then we have days where it really just isn't happening.
Right.
And we'll just, James, you said it, choose your battle. We're not going to make that school thing a battle, especially with our older teenage kids, you know, where they're just like, I'm so over this thing. Mm-hmm. We'll just let it go and let them have a moment. And very often they'll go do something, swing or play or dance or whatever it is. And then they'll come back to it on their time, on their terms. Yeah. And something I'm a little sensitive to, you guys can speak into this too, is it's kind of bugging me because I have all these little kids. The first thing they do when they get up in the morning is what? They go grab their laptop and flop it open. And so we're seeing our kids actually grow up a little too old, a little too soon. Like they're doing stuff that I do at age 46 and I've been doing for years and years and years.
Yeah, getting straight to business. Yeah.
Right? So maybe can you speak into that a bit?
Yeah, I bet Casey can, about just like the stress and the trauma of, you know, they're taking much more responsibility for their education than they've ever had to before.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Stephanie, all of that is just absolute gold. Thank you. I hope our viewers are just getting so much out of this. Phenomenal. Just a quick comment on the homeschooling. I think some parents are worried that, like, my kid doesn't keep up with their schoolwork, then, you know, they're going to get dumber than every other kid. Like, don't worry. Everyone in society's kids are getting dumber. So, because it's homeschooling.
Especially mine.
And so, Casey, aren't we like under, when we do that, aren't we minimizing emotional intelligence and how important it is? I mean, people being emotionally intelligent, our kids being equipped to deal with stress, that is so overlooked. You can always learn the skills down the line, the math skills and that stuff, but it's going to be really hard to learn emotional intelligence later on in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Stephanie, just because one of the things that we don't always realize with kids, I know I didn't realize it, is that the way that kids understand their world, the way they process their emotions and make sense of what's happening to them is through play. And play is actually also the way that they activate the higher order thinking that promotes brain development and greater connectivity between their right and left lobes. And so play is absolutely essential for a child's brain development and their ability to learn. It's also just fun. Like, how great is it to just share and joy with your child and to feel that deep bond that comes from shared joy? So I think this is a time to really, really invest in play with your children and see what happens.
So Casey, you've got a phenomenal acronym for us parents to follow. So the floor is yours. Fire away, inspire us.
All right, thanks, James. I think everyone is so kind to me. So thank you for giving me a chance to share with you guys and be a part of this discussion. I just think all of you parents out there are absolutely amazing. When I'm working with families, I always joke, like I get the kid for maybe 2 hours a week, and then it's the parents who do all the hard work to create a safe space for their child to learn and grow. And they do that every day. There's no time off as a parent. So I'm just honored to be a part of this discussion, and I hope that there's something I say that brings you encouragement or hope. Similar to what Stephanie said, this HOME acronym is kind of like a framework for understanding different areas of supporting your child during a time of crisis that's caused so much disruption and maybe some dysregulation where their body's not feeling calm anymore. Maybe they don't even know what they're feeling or how to say it. But it's just a framework. So if there's one thing you can pull out of it, one skill that feels like, oh, this would work for my family, that's great. Because I wouldn't expect anyone to take all of this. That would be too much. So maybe just listen for something that resonates with you personally and you think, wow, that'd be a great fit for me and my family or me and my child. I think they'd love that. And just stick with that. So adapting during a crisis, the framework I created was HOME. So each letter of HOME stands for a different category. And we'll start with H. H stands for harnessing emotions with creative coping. And I'm sure all of us, whether it's adults or children, it doesn't matter who you are, we've all had some big emotions during this time. I think when crisis comes in, it causes so much change. And with change, there is loss and confusion. And so I'm sure if we could all just raise our hands, like who's felt angry at some point, who's felt sad at some point, who's felt disappointed at some point. And you know, adults, we have a hard time with these emotions. So of course, I think kids will as well. And so I just wanted to list a couple different creative options. Since you're all at home, you could talk about processing and coping with big feelings in a different way because you have more face-to-face time. So one example for a younger child would be to build a glitter globe together. And you can do this just with like a mason jar or a water bottle. You can add water or soap or oil to it. You can add food coloring, and then different size glitter. And then what happens is when you screw the lid on top and you shake it, it kind of looks like a lava lamp. It's mesmerizing to look at. And something that I've done with kids I've worked with is what we'll do is we'll start off saying, noticing how they're feeling in their body. So if their heart's racing a little fast or their shoulders feel tense or they feel like their face is really hot, we'll start off with just naming the emotion and helping them realize what they feel in their body and what the name of that emotion is. So it's just called naming and taming. And that's kind of like your base level. You're helping your kid understand, what am I feeling? And then you practice a coping skill. And this is where the glitter globe could come in handy. And what I do is I would take the glitter globe and I would say, okay, shake it as hard as you can, as fast as you can. And they'll notice how tight their muscles are feeling. And then I say, stop. And we notice how your body's starting to feel relaxed because you went from tight to relaxed. And they get to notice that just something as simple as shaking a glitter globe can actually help their body relax. And your kid can do this at like 5 and 6 years old, and they're already starting to learn emotion regulation. And then the second thing you can do with the glitter globe is help them notice that as they're watching each little piece of glitter fall to the bottom of your glitter globe, just as the glitter is settling down, the child is settling down too. So a simple phrase you could say is, we're calming down with the glitter, or we're settling down with the glitter. And this can be a fun activity because it can go from craft time to emotion regulation time later in the day if your child's having a hard time. Another example of creative coping would be things that you can do outdoors until it gets like blistering hot. And some things you can do outdoors are create like an outdoor obstacle course. And I think this is really helpful for kids who are a little more hyperactive and they just have the type of body that needs to expend a little extra energy, and they need to exercise in order to feel more calm and focused. And I think an outdoor obstacle course is a great way to do that. Another idea is a mindfulness walk. And this is something that you can kind of combine with your faith as well. Something I like to do, it can be in your backyard, it can be in your home, it can be outside or in a park. And what you'll do is, as a family, you go on a walk and you're going to notice 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And that can be really fun because maybe you could surprise your kid with like a piece of candy or a juice box or something at the end. And just that process of mindfulness, it actually calms the brain down and your central nervous system, and it helps the child become more aware of what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And that self-awareness actually helps them to connect more to themselves and to you. And what you can do is you can process before the walk and after the walk how their feelings changed, so that they can make that association in their brain of, when I do this and I'm feeling upset, it helps me. And something I like to do at the end of a mindfulness walk is practice gratitude. And this is a time where the whole family can get around and say something like, what was your favorite part of the mindfulness walk? What made you feel most happy or most focused or most curious, whatever you want to say. And then everyone gets to talk about their favorite thing. And then you can end it by saying, let's thank God for our favorite thing of this mindful walk, because God provided that to us as a gift. And it's a way to practice gratitude at the end too. Two other examples of just creative coping. You can play Simon Says, and this is a great way to help your kids burn off some energy, because you can do something like Simon says, run as fast as you can in place, stop. And then you can make them go really slow too, and help them notice what makes them feel more calm and focused. Do they feel more calm and focused when they're moving really slow or really fast? And that can be a fun way to practice focus and self-control, but also burn off some energy. And then lastly, deep breathing. And I think an easy way to do this with older kids is you can actually practice deep breathing using apps like the Calm app or Headspace. There's lots of places you can learn different techniques. And then with little kids, a really fun way to do it is to combine deep breathing with blowing bubbles and then mindfully popping the bubbles. So you take a deep breath in through your nose, you blow out through your mouth. You want to make your exhales longer than your inhales. That's actually what calms your central nervous system. And then just let your kids blow bubbles for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you guys can pop them together or count them. And that's something that is really calming as well. So those are some examples for creative coping. For H, harnessing emotions. So now we can move on to O in home, which is opening up to new conversations. And there's lots of ways you can do this. I think during a crisis, questions come up. And like Stephanie said, every kid is going to understand this differently. Every kid is going to have a different need, a different question, a different way to process this. And so just make this true for whatever your family's need is. But some ideas, for some families, it's easier to follow the child's lead by maybe starting with a book. And you can read books around themes of change, themes of loss, themes of worry or fear. And these could be fun books or like actual psychoeducational books. There are books written by therapists with these themes. And then notice what your kid says and kind of follow their lead. If your kid has a question or if there's a character they really liked, then follow their lead and try to learn more about why they loved that character or what question they may have had. And that book can be a really good starting place for building new conversations around some of the things that your child might be experiencing. A second idea is parents, what you do yourselves actually matters a lot. How you model your own process of emotions and coping with emotions, your children will learn to emulate. I'll never forget, I have a little sister-in-law. She's a lot younger than me. And when she was 6 years old, I was on a phone call and I noticed I could hear her voice in the background because my husband was also on a phone call. He was talking with my 6-year-old sister-in-law and they were saying goodbye. So I get off my phone call and I'm just listening in because my sister-in-law Riley is the cutest little thing. And all of a sudden Brandon's like, bye Riley, I love you. And 6-year-old Riley goes, bye Brandon, farewell. Send my regards to Casey and to Gizmo, please. I was like burst into laughter. I was like, oh my gosh, how did a 6-year-old learn how to say farewell, send my regards? And
that's how all British children actually speak at that age.
Oh, kidding. They're just
Stop it. Are you serious, James?
To the rest of us, James. Way superior.
Oh, that's amazing. Here's to the British people everywhere.
Amen.
So that's just a practical example of children, as James said earlier, they're always watching.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful things we can do as caring adults, as parents, is model for them what it's like to feel our emotions, to talk about them, and to cope with them. So something as simple as a mom or dad saying, oh, I'm feeling a little worried right now. This is a hard day. I'm going to take a deep breath and talk to your dad because talking about my feelings helps me to feel better. Something as simple as a narration like that is setting the tone for your child, helping them understand what they might do when they're feeling bad. Another way to open up.
Can I just jump right in right there?
Yeah, jump in.
Those I feel statements, even for grown-ups, adults are so valuable because you can say really hard things, right? Really true things if you load it up with just simply how it makes you feel, right?
That's good.
It just lands differently when you aren't accusing, you're not saying, right? You're just saying, this is how I'm feeling right now. And it just puts it out there and causes people to respond in a way that's helpful. That's brilliant. Way to go.
Thank you for highlighting that. I so appreciate that, Brian. I think when you were talking, what came to mind for me is I feel statements can be so hard because they make us vulnerable. And it's hard to be vulnerable because you open yourself up to rejection or for someone to not meet you where you're at.
Yep.
But the beautiful thing is vulnerability gives the freedom for other people to be vulnerable too. So when as parents, we model vulnerability for our children in safe spaces, all of a sudden your child starts to feel the freedom to be vulnerable with you because they've seen mom and dad do that with one another. And that's so powerful. So it takes a lot of bravery. I agree, it's really hard for adults and for children, but it is so powerful. So thank you for highlighting that, Brian. The last thing I'll talk about under opening new conversations, the O of home, is having emotional check-ins and then also the potential of building a COVID storybook. So I'll do emotional check-ins first. Emotional check-ins can be something as simple as having a question or a couple questions that you kind of go over every couple days, just to check in with your kids, see how they're doing. It could be something like, what was something fun that happened today? And what was something hard that happened today? Or what's something about this time that you love? What's something about this time that you miss? Just keeping it really simple and concrete, because sometimes the ambiguous questions are harder. And then also, this might work for some kids, might not for others, but creating a COVID storybook. And if the word COVID-19 is scary for children, you could change the title to something like Our Stay-at-Home Memories.
Yeah.
And this is a chance, because I know every phase has been different for each family. Like maybe just once a week, you could create a new chapter of it, of some of the children's favorite memories from this week, some of the things that were hard, challenges they had to overcome, and then some of the things they learned. And so what you're doing when you create this storybook is you're helping your child create a narrative around this disruptive and difficult time that can make sense in their mind. And a lot of kids need help with this because their frontal lobe is not fully developed yet. So that logic and reasoning, the forethought, planning, consequences of all this stuff is hard for them to understand. And so parents can really help by being that planning and organizing frontal lobe for their children. And building this book together is one way you can help them kind of organize their experience, understand what's happening to them, get some of their questions answered, but also remember what they're learning and the resilience that they're building, which is such a gift at this time. We're all learning how to be stronger right now because we're having to flex new emotional, new cognitive, and new spiritual muscles. And if we continue exercising those muscles together, we'll all be stronger. And that can be a gift at the end, even though right now we're all just really sore and tired.
So Casey, just talking about kids' resilience there, we know that kids are very resilient, and I love that idea of helping them cope with what's going on now with, you know, writing it down, making a diary or a book about it. But a quick question really, I think sometimes kids in the moment are very resilient, but at some point their resilience runs out. And can it manifest itself in the future? And maybe having a book or some kind of record of that time that it was very difficult is something that they can use in the future when that resilience at the time was great, but it's kind of, you know, unraveling maybe at a later stage.
I love that question, James. And Stephanie, feel free to tag on as well with your perspective too. One of the most powerful things about building resilience in children, and just to give a brief description, resilience is just the ability to bounce back from a challenge. So in order to create resilience in a child, they actually have to face a challenge. And COVID-19 is a challenge. So we have an opportunity to help our children learn how to bounce back. And so as you're helping them learn how to bounce back, you're reflecting on the lessons learned, you're building these emotion regulation skills, you're helping them with their abilities to name and tame their emotions and to connect with you more deeply. These skills are so valuable because they're not just about getting through this moment. Those skills, if you continue to practice them, will get them through the future challenge. It's kind of like anything that we do to get stronger. If I'm training for a 5K, then all the muscles I build training for a 5K as I'm running help me be more prepared for when I face the 10K that I'm going to run 6 months from now. Yeah. And our emotional, our mental, our spiritual muscles are the same way. And so you're building a foundation, and it doesn't mean there aren't going to be bigger challenges that might make your child feel afraid or worried or nervous that they can't climb that challenge. But it does mean that you're building a foundation that you can build on for the future challenge so that they have a firm foundation to start climbing the next mountain with. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So I know we could talk about this all day and probably all night, but, you know, for our viewers, want to keep this moving. So we got to H-O, what's M?
M is meet your child where they are at. And I'll be brief on this one because I think Stephanie did an excellent job at just elaborating on what this can mean. Meeting your child where it's at could mean following their lead. It can mean looking at the ways they're already learning to cope. It could mean just narrating their emotional experience. So the two examples I put were meeting them in their emotions, which could just mean if you see they're sad, say, oh, I see that this is hard for you, that you're feeling so sad right now. And then offering them a simple choice of what might make them feel better, offering them a hug or a chance to go blow bubbles or a snack or a nap, whatever they may need. And then meeting them in their physical needs as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that for E under scheduling. But meeting emotional needs, meeting your physical needs, just meeting your child where they're at. And then E is the last letter in the acronym, and E stands for engaging in healthy rhythms. And this part of adapting to this crisis is not only reactionary, but preventative. It's kind of like that metaphor of, if you guys ever seen where there was like a glass and there's a glass and you just keep on filling it with water, and a little bit of the water is maybe your home responsibilities, and then you have your work responsibilities, and then you have your volunteer responsibilities, and maybe you have a second job, and all of a sudden this glass is full to the very top with water. Like it's just barely not spilling over the edge. You've got it all together. The water's inside the glass, but just barely. And then what happens? The table shakes. And it only took one shake of the table, just a little bit of stress, for the water to spill over the edges. Yeah. And our life is just like that. And so a part of engaging in healthy rhythms is coping with now, but also preparing in the future, because when we build a schedule or a structure that creates space for ourselves and for our children to rest, then we have more margin to really handle the stress that life is going to throw at us, whether it be COVID-19 or the stress that we face in the future. So some quick tips for that. You can post visual aids for your family of the actual schedule that your children are on right now. You can post visual aids of family rules. I put them in multiple places in the house because it's a way to build autonomy for your kids. Instead of answering every question for them, you can just point them to the visual aid, so they learn to kind of go back and reference it themselves. And every kid is going to have a different schedule that is perfect for them, depending on how old they are and what their needs are and what support they need. But I would just include in the schedule your time for school, time for rest, time for family time, food, and maybe some time built into FaceTime friends too, because I think one of the big fears a lot of kids are facing is they haven't seen their friends in a while, and they start worrying, like, when am I going to see them again? And so if you have planned time with their friends on FaceTime, that's something they know. It's secure. It's happening every time. They know that they're going to get to see their friends, and it's not going to be forever until they don't see them again. And I think that can bring a lot of comfort, since social support is actually the #1 predictor of resilience.
My kids love FaceTiming their friends, and it's so interesting to see how it's different between the two children, and that can happen if you have different children in your household. My daughter will be on FaceTime and I have to rip her away. Yeah. You know, after an hour or two, she can go on. And then my son, we found that he was just, you know, it was like, hey, okay. But then once we had the headset on and they were playing a game together, and I would just like overhear, all these conversations are taking place between him and his buddies while they're playing this game. They needed the game for them to engage in communication, whereas my daughter didn't need that at all with her. And it's interesting, Casey, to see parallel play virtually, because they will be like doing their own thing, like painting or something, and they're just on FaceTime. It's on, and they're doing an activity together. So yeah, so to your point, Casey, that's worked very well in my home.
That's good. So Casey, let me get that right. HOME, harness emotions, opening conversation, meeting the children where they're at, and engaging in healthy rhythms. That's absolute gold dust there for parents. Yeah, anything else you want to add to that?
I think the last thing I would add to that is just specializing this to make it your own. Whatever individual thing resonates with you that you think could bring joy or help or meaning to your family, I would encourage you to just make this your own. It's not about copying every piece. It's about finding what works for your family.
Excellent. Thank you, Casey. That's phenomenal. So just heading towards wrapping this up now, I want to ask Brian, I did mention right at the start of this that either we can look at it as we have to spend all this time with our kids, or we get to spend all of this time with our kids. Maybe you could give us an example or two of just some of the joys and some of the wins that you've experienced as a family. I'm sure there must be something with 13 kids.
Yeah, no, there's a few, and I heard somebody say it really well the other day. We probably won't ever have this season again, right? So you're right. I mean, this ought to be a season that we cherish and absolutely make the most of, even if it's as simple as if one of our kids is having a hard moment. Right, the thing we want to always do is foster deeper connection with them, especially in that hard moment. And they might be absolutely, see if you parents resonate with this, where they're like resisting you. They don't want to talk to you about it. They don't want to engage with you about it. Sometimes what my wife and I will do is we'll just grab our kid, even some of our older kids, and we'll just set them on our lap, right? And we'll just go, look, I love you. We're going to get through this, whatever it is that's hard. And I've had really big kids, my kids, on my lap, like sobbing into my shoulder, even recently, because life is hard, it's uncertain, there's so much ahead, and you just feel that tension just leaving their, like they didn't want you to hug them and hold them, but the next thing you know is they're sobbing into your shoulder, and it's this I can't name any names. My kids would absolutely kill me if I named their names on this thing.
Yeah, don't do that.
Very, very redemptive and healing for them in this moment. Something else that we do a lot at our house, we've got some kids that come from really hard places. They're navigating a whole bunch of stuff from their past, not to mention their present, right? And we'll just, I don't know how this works in the spiritual realm, but we'll often go into our kids' room while they're sleeping, and we'll pray prayers over them that they might be uncomfortable with while they're awake, but we'll just pray prayers over them that God would do something absolutely spectacular in them, even while they rest, that stuff would be recalibrated and reset, that God would move in their hearts and lives in such a way that they actually wake up tomorrow morning in a new place. And I don't have data for you on that. I just know God loves to move in lives, and he uses prayer to do that. And we've seen dramatic things happen just as a result of this simple, I'm going to go into my teenage boy's room while they're sleeping. I'm going to pray big prayers over them and ask God to do really cool stuff. So there's been some great connecting. Another, can I do this, James? Can I just do one more little, and this is
absolutely.
This is from the realm, very, very practical. I think we're all tired, right? If you're a parent, you're particularly tired in this season. And I'm not just talking a physical tired, we're sort of a soul weary tired. There's so much uncertainty. The stress is off the charts. Lots of us are just running on adrenaline right now, frankly, waiting for our adrenal glands to expire, right? Because they just can't give any more of that. And oftentimes we sit down at the end of a long, hard day, and maybe it wasn't a perfect day, and we want sort of a formula to how to make this all better. How do I shake this off? How do I, and even a tendency to maybe over spiritualize it even. But what if what you need, what if what your kids need, what if what your family really needs is like a great meal and a really good night's sleep. And I don't want to oversimplify. There's been a ton of really solid, really psychologically informed content here. But just on the uber practical side, I go to the story of Elijah, right? And he waged this incredible battle against the prophets of Baal, and he sent them back to where they came from. And then what did he do? He came down the mountain and he sort of collapsed after this great battle. And what was God's need meeting aid to him? Hey, some really great food and a really good night's sleep. And how God even just uses those very simple things to actually bring restoration and healing to us at the deepest part of our being. Might be just the thing.
Absolutely. You're preaching it there, Brian. So more of that preaching at Bayside Folsom Facebook on the weekend. That's awesome. So that leads nicely just into kind of a closing thought. And Casey, you mentioned about engaging in healthy rhythms. I want to encourage, just wearing my kids pastor hat now, engaging in healthy spiritual rhythms with your family. And Brian has alluded to, there is definitely a spiritual battle for our kids' souls. And this is a spiritual battle in this season. And so I want to encourage you as parents just to get some spiritual rhythms going as well in your home. So pick a time where you're going to read the Bible together. You're going to read a kids' devotion together. You're going to watch the sideshow together.
Amen.
Open up just opportunities for you to have faith talk as well. Loads of really great psychological, emotional advice there, but also remember, you get to spend time with your kids in this season to help them grow spiritually. So look for those opportunities to have faith talks as you consistently grow as a family in your faith. Well, again, I say we could talk about all this stuff forever. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've taken notes listening to you guys. Can everybody watching just give a big air high five to our panel there? Big round of applause, however you want to say thanks. So remember, we want to send out the notes and some extra resources to you. So text CV Parents to 56316 to get more information. And please do share this on your social media channels. I'm sure there are other parents who love to listen to this amazing advice from these three people anyway. But I want to say thank you for watching this webinar. We do pray and hope that it was helpful for you as parents. At Bayside, we love you. We love your kids. Yeah. We want the very best for you as a family. We are here for you. And we just pray that God will help you grow personally and as a family through this season. So thank you, everybody, for watching. You guys want to say anything else before we go?
Thank you so much for being here. It's a privilege to be with you all. I've learned, I've grown, so thanks so much.
Thank you. We're in this together, and we're going to make it through, parents.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone. God bless.